Welcome to Campaigns and Coffee. Grab your mug and let's dive into tales of adventure and the answers to your quirkiest of questions. Today, we're actually going to be talking about agency in the game for players and how you as a GM or as a player could make the game more dynamic and not just follow that railroad.
I have my Star Wars Sparks campaign, which I'm in a lot, and I'm presenting a scenario, and I'm like, hey guys, here's the scene. Let me dress it up for you. Tell you you're standing in a Star Destroyer, and there's dust in the corner, and sharp angular walls, and there's a lone droid at the very edge that seems to be down on battery power. What do you do? And they all just stare at me.
Yep.
And they don't go and explore like it's a kindergarten room. And how do we get people back to the kindergarten state where they're like, oh, I touched this, I moved that?
We need to get Stephanie to play that thing, because Stephanie is the one that we're like in what was After Dark. We're just gonna go one way, and she just decides, no, I'm just gonna go this way. I'm gonna go.
That's great. That's an agency. That's doing something.
It is, and it is not solely a Sparks issue. It's the way some of these modules are written, or the way that, because it's a module or because it's a con game, things get moved along. And there are times when I sit down at the Sparks games and I'm like, okay, I don't have any hooks that I can grab as a player or that grab me as a player. So I'm just gonna wait for a little bit for the next part of the module to come along, as if you're passively there reading a book.
Do you think that there's also, because there's this inherent, I guess call it fear of splitting the party, right?
I think there's a lot of fear overall about doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I think people they spend a lot of time overthinking. I see this with my 10-year D&D party right now. Is a lot of times I've got to put a clock in place or nudge them gently because they don't know what to do in the situation. And I think there's a couple of things there. I think number one, trying to encourage them to take it less seriously, no matter what happens and maybe that's having ground rules on the way up. Maybe you say, all right, there's not going to be any character death, but there will be comatose. And then maybe people will feel like this is an action movie. This isn't like ultra realistic, giving them permission to do. What's the saying? Good decisions come from experience. Experience comes from bad decisions.
Nice.
And when we talk about experience points, it's not about getting it all right. It's about doing things. So the thing that I'm working with now, we're about to start a new campaign, and I was talking about this before we started recording, but getting the characters to be proactive instead of just reacting to what the evil guy is doing. In a con or a module, it's a little bit harder, but, trying to have the characters be as fully fleshed out individuals with desires and goals and fears and, really heavy on the role playing, so that when they get into the game, they have reasons to do things. One of the things that I like, though, Aaron, that I've also seen, and it was in one of the 2014 Dungeon and Dragons books, was the idea of having patrons. So basically you give the party a boss to hire them to do specific things. You don't just drop them in.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I think Cyberpunk has going for it. Cyberpunk is really nothing but a series of jobs, but you always know what you're trying to accomplish in those jobs. D&D dungeon crawling isn't always like that. It's like, okay, we're going to go in and whatever happens, happens. That's kind of terrible. You're going in to do a thing. You're being hired to explore. You're being, so giving them that motivation, I think, might be good. Putting the stakes on the table, I think.
Were you going to say something, Ken?
I was just going to say, I think sometimes it's priming the pump. And so them also knowing that things will continue to happen. So I was just editing the Shadow Dark episode and talking about the torch as we don't have time to discuss this in committee sort of thing, right? We got to get moving, right? And so I think that forces agency because everybody knows that the torch is burning down. So we can't just sit here and wait for things to happen. We need to move because it's worse if we don't move. And I think, especially with con games and stuff, like if you've set up that initial inciting action, right? The Star Destroyer is on fire and going to explode in 3 hours. You got to get off before then, right? And so, yes, it's compelling them forward, but it's also giving them that spark to be, okay, we have to do something, right? And if they continue to do nothing, then yes, maybe they start reacting to the scenes, but that may then inspire them to take agency. I don't know. It's like getting them into problem-solving mode rather than just like firing up stormtroopers over their shoulders or whatever. I mean, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping like you can get to that turning point in their brains where we're like, oh, well, no, we need to figure out a solution here because we can't just sit here or else we're all going to die in the trash.
Yeah. And in terms of like the Sparks campaign, it didn't start out that way though. You would often sit down at a table and the characters, the players would have agency and do their own thing. And there would be times where it would be like a 10-page module and you'd start the first page and they're pretty condensed, in terms of what they're doing. They're not like fully written out like a D&D, big book sort of thing. But it was, you'd get through and you get like a page and a half into the module. You wouldn't know how far you were in the module, but the GM would go, oh, okay. So you're going to do that. And then they'd take the rest of the module and like throw it over their shoulder. And then you just keep playing.
Literally.
But over time, that sort of play style and that permissiveness from the GM kind of went away. Like I remember one time when we went in and there were just 3 of us playing the module and we had a really good idea of how to take down the big bad evil guy. And we did, and he went down really fast. And then the author of the module like heard about it and said, they shouldn't have done that. That shouldn't have happened. Blah, 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 blah. It's like you have to be, they are supposed to be really tough. It's like, well, we had good ideas.
You're playing the game wrong. You're doing the game wrong.
Yeah, that was exactly what the feedback on that was. And it was, but it was around that time that, that people started losing that impetus to do things like sell water to Tatooine, for instance.
Right.
Which Aaron's character did and broke everything at one point, which was hilarious.
I think you're right, though, David. I think there's a certain amount of railroading that takes place. I saw it in some of the D&D campaigns. There's an assumption that you're going to be on these guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a scale on this. It's all about permission, right? So maybe, like I don't run a lot of games at cons, so I don't know that very well, but maybe just sitting down and reminding people, you have permission to do the things you think your character would do. Don't worry about, and just starting with that, because, now I'm playing as I start this new campaign, I'm playing a much longer game to do exactly that by using Ex Novo to create the city. So everyone feels like they're bought in on where they're starting and, planning the little city together and creating characters together and making sure they have bonds and all of that. So it's the same idea, but it's the permission to, these guys have agency, go use it.
Yep. And if you're coming from D&D and you bought one of those, big books, I don't know how much those are, $30, $40 or more.
I mean, 40, 50 sometimes. I mean, it depends.
So like, you're like, let me buy this. It's going to be a year-long or more campaign. And then, 2 sessions into it, your characters, the players make a decision that isn't handled by the book and would, or you can only fit so much into a book without it becoming an encyclopedia to try and read to understand it. And, if you don't read through the whole thing, you're definitely in danger of, the party killed this character. And then, a couple of sessions later, you realize, oh, that person's still supposed to be alive for the entire rest of the campaign.
But I
what do you
think,
do?
I think that's prep. I think every good game master, and this is where we get hate mail, reads things ahead of time. And if you really know your people, you say, what do I do if they do this backwards? Because they will always do it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
I just, to your point, I just finished running Rime of the Frost Maiden. It was 4 years because of COVID and vacations and burnout and all of that. But we finished it. It was very satisfying, but I did not run that thing verbatim. I made an awful lot of changes and pivots and things depending on what the characters did, because no one's going to run the whole railroad track the whole way unless you're playing a kick the door, loot the room style game. And there's nothing wrong with those. Some people really enjoy those, but I like the role playing.
The other thing, I guess, is if you make the, like, before you even start playing, if you make the call out of, hey guys, I'm not going to give you a whole lot of guardrails here. This is going to be, whatever you want to do, I'll adapt to you guys. Like, we just started our 4th campaign in my Sunday night group, and we're all playing bad guys. And literally he said, you guys are going to start in the back of a carriage because something bad happened, and the world is your playground. I'll adapt to you guys. We're starting level 1, like we're all powerless and weak, and we have to stick together right now. And we literally woke up on a carriage, like full on Skyrim style.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
said, hey, you're awake. That was the first line of our campaign.
Nice.
And it's honestly, we're 2 sessions in. It's probably the funnest campaign that we've had so far.
I think a while back, Ken used a word that I've tried to work into as I begin to run this thing: cinematic. Feel free to be cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to carefully go through and check every square on the map. I want you to leap in and deal with whatever comes back at you. I want it to be movie style action, not we're playing figurines on a board, kind of thing.
Yep.
Do you think Theater of the Mind helps with that? Like playing the Theater of the Mind style rather than having constant maps of everything? You think it helps with that?
You're nodding. If people are listening in audio, Chris is agreeing.
I'm agreeing. Sorry. Yes. I agree. Yes, very insightful. Very well done.
I was just thinking about this, though. I think there's also a part of it is, they call it the paradox of choice, right? Where having infinite options actually causes a lot of anxiety and stresses people out because there's all of the things. So you come to the table and you're super excited and you're like, guess what, guys? You can do anything you want. And everyone just looks at you and goes, huh?
Yeah. And that, I think that is where, that's where in character creation, having goals for your character really helps. But it's all about the hooks. Whether it's player created or GM created, there has to be a hook into the world that interests people, that they just want to pursue that. I did find the session in Fate Core. It's where they say characters in the game of Fate should be proactive. They have a variety of abilities that lend themselves to active problem solving. They aren't timid about using them. They don't sit around waiting for a solution to a crisis to come to them. They go out and apply their energies, taking risks and overcoming obstacles to achieve their goals. And, it's just, you need hooks. That blank page certainly can be paralyzing, but having a reason for your character to adventure, or having interesting points of interest or interesting plot lines that the characters know about, even at the start of the game, could be enough of a hook to get people to be more proactive.
I think
I was going to say, Ken, you've described my experience with every open world game I've ever played. Like, I'm playing No Man's Sky last night going, what do I do in this thing? I don't even know. Go.
Yeah, I mean, I got the same thing in Red Dead Redemption, right? I'm playing Red Dead Redemption 2 right now, and it's like, I could do everything, like rob a stagecoach or what have you. But I think having the character backgrounds is helpful. But I think we're talking, like Aaron's original point was, how can we move people along? If your goal is to get people who are used to reacting to being active and taking the lead in these things, how do you do that. And I think part of it, if you're talking about the inciting action for your campaign as something is going to happen. And so I think then if you tie it back into your character, right? So yeah, you've got the 4-page backstory and it says your long lost brother, and what have you. And then he's the guy who comes stumbling into the tavern, and he dies with, the dagger in his back, and he hands off the scroll to you, and now boom, like, who killed my brother, right? Like, I have an immediate connection. Yes, there's like the campaign is forcing you in a particular direction, but you have an immediate, like, how do I react to this? What do you do? Right.
I would say it's perfectly fine as a GM to supply those hooks. The long lost brother coming in, it's like, who killed my brother? Why was my brother in this situation in the first place? What's in that scroll? There's 3 hooks right there. And different people in the party will gravitate to each of those different hooks. And like, even in Skyrim, they guide you in that first area. You get pulled in the thing, you're about to get your head chopped off, the dragon attacks, and then people are like, it's the mini tutorial sort of thing that doesn't seem like a tutorial, but you go through and you eventually pop out of this, sunken area, and there's a path in front of you. Well, you can go anywhere, but I imagine 99% of the people are just going to go down that path and see what's down there. Whereas you could go, where did I come from on that carriage? Let me go back and see where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never done that, but it just occurred to me now that I could have done that in Skyrim.
Well, and it's funny because players created mods. There was a great one where you rebuild Helgen and you go back to Helgen, and but yeah. I mean, that the beginning, you got to set people on the path a little bit, but once they feel like they've got agency, hopefully, they begin to go and do things. And there are some players that will always try to, as Aaron said, win the game. But, that's not what this is about.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of like a role-playing game versus a computer game. Like, in the computer game, unless you have someone who's built a mod to rebuild Helgen, you're not rebuilding Helgen. But in the role-playing game, they're like, okay, the dragon flew off. I'm going to go back and help the survivors. I'm going to help them rebuild. And then the whole campaign is different at that point, rather than going down to Whiterun and other things like that, which is where most of the game has steered you toward. You might have a character that's like, hey, I want to save those people. The people who lived in that area, other than the Imperials, they were just innocent people. I'm going to go.
So I think the other thing I was thinking about was game mechanics as a way of encouraging people to be proactive. And I think we saw it in Fate. For me, the biggest one was when I was playing Battlestar Galactica, which is using the Cortex rules, and they have plot points as a mechanic. And I remember playing it at Gen Con, they're like that the plot points should fall like rain, right? Because people should be getting them and spending them as quickly as you can. And it made a huge difference at the table because I have a guy, he's a great guy, tends to be a little bit more passive at the table, a little more reactive. But in that session, with the temptation of the plot points, he was like leaping into it because he wanted the plot points because it fueled the game mechanics that he found engaging, right? And so suddenly, just from a mechanical perspective, right, you're not just waiting for plot to happen. It's like, I want to do cool stuff. I need to do stuff to get cool stuff, so let me do it. And I think that's one of the frustrations I have with 5th edition. Like, I wish they'd gone to 3 points of inspiration for like your pool, because I've been using that in my Apocalypse game. And when you have one, you hoard it. You're waiting for the perfect moment to spend it, right? And even when I'm trying to encourage them to do it, don't worry, I'll give you another one. It's like, I don't know. And I'm constantly having to remind them. But in Savage Worlds and in Fate and in Cortex, I never have to remind anyone to do anything because they're like, gimme, gimme, gimme.
I mean, that's why I love Fate points in Fate, is not only do the players have it, but the GM has the ability to force the players to take them in a air quotes, because the players can resist it's called a compel. So it's like, you're at a bar, your character loves partying, loves drinking, but you're supposed to be watching that back room that the rest of the party's in. And the bartender slides a thing over, slides a drink over to you and says, on the house. And then the GM slides a little plot point to the middle of the table and says, here's a compel to have you start drinking. And they have the choice of, hey, I can just get this free plot point, free being there'll be consequences in character. But if you don't want to take it, you spend a plot point to resist that compel. But that's part of the back and forth of plot points, in addition to the, oh, you did a cool thing here, I'm going to give you a plot point or a fate point. And it's, if you've compelled, as a player that something is negative is going to happen out of that. So like you're in the middle of drinking, you've accepted that plot point, that fate point. And that's when the people looking for you guys have come in the front door, but you're too busy drinking to warn your friends in the back to, before they bust into the back room, that sort of thing.
And it's funny, in the newest version of D&D, I think it's the human species, they got rid of races. There's a lot of things that got split between backgrounds and species now, which I think is brilliant. But I believe it's humans start every day with an inspiration.
Yes.
Interesting.
And good. I've thought about bringing in Savage Worlds bennies to these things, and I may yet do it, but I'm a little worried it'll unbalance things a little too much. But I mean, again, to lower risk, give the players less, to feel like there's less risk, is the only way to get them to take initiative.
Yeah, unless the risk can be cinematic in some.
Right. And I don't know, I think there's also a type of player, I know I am this type of player, that is perfectly willing to do the wrong thing just to make the game a little more fun.
Yeah.
I know I have done this in the past because I truly enjoy it. It's the guy that does the Leroy Jenkins, right? I mean, it's if something is come to a standstill, they're going to be the one to do the stupid or the interesting or the unexpected. Like when Aaron went in through the ventilation we were sitting there talking and whoop, Aaron's gone. So, but that was great. It got us moving again.
Yep. I'm going to let Erin tell the story, but she had that happen when she was running this week. She was running a Rhodian in Star Wars in SOTOR, but it's a role-playing guild, so they were doing a game, and they had captured this Rhodian. They were going to torture him, and he starts to bargain with him. And one of the players did exactly what you said, which was just basically make everything worse. I don't even think they knew that they were making everything worse, but Erin, why don't you go ahead and tell what happened? You're muted.
So the Rhodian's hanging out there, and I'm dreading the fact that they're going to be, asking questions and pulling out the knives and all that. So I'm thinking this Rhodian just is going to start bargaining with them. And he's like, okay, I got answers to your questions. You open the cage and I give you an answer. And then I'm going to start walking towards, I'm going to walk 5 feet towards the hangar and I'll give you another answer. And he's just thinking, I will give them answers as I get closer to an escape ship. And we all know that you're basically walking me out, but, And so he's given them some answers. He's like, yeah, here's the bad guy. And somehow this turns. So this does turn into a little player agency here, where they want to give him a tracker so he'll go back to the bad guy so they know where the bad guy is rather than ask him. I don't know why they thought this, but they give him a bag of spice and he's like, sure. You know what's even better is if I take them some more information on you, because he's an informant on them. He's been selling information on these people or a hostage. Lo and behold, this goes from this Rhodian potentially getting tortured to getting a bag of spice to take a tracker to the bad guy, to then also getting a bag of spice to take a tracker to the bad guy, which is in one of their hostages because somebody volunteers to be a hostage. He's like, this is the best day ever. Because he's going to get paid now twice for them volunteering to be a hostage for him.
Which he can then sell to the bad guy. Oh, and they gave him a ship to go there too.
Yes. They also give him a ship. He's like,
You appealed to the
I love you
damsel.
people.
Like, this is my best day. Like, she described this to me, and I'm like, this is like Benny from The Mummy, but like more competent, perhaps.
Uh-huh. I love that so much.
You appealed to the damsel. I mean, it works.
Yeah, I did appeal to a damsel, like, plot line. Because he was like, I'll take a hostage to them. And then all of a sudden they were like leaping at me.
So I don't have a minion, a henchman, or a future overlord. Well, I could pull one randomly. I mean, we have a bunch, but we do want you to either podcast at Lair of Secrets or in the comments of this video, if you're watching on YouTube or something, send us in a question that you have that, about a minion or an overlord or a henchman, whichever one you are, send us in a question. One I've just pulled from our minion is, what are the top tools for coordinating multi-dimensional invasions remotely, ensuring all minions seek up across time zones and planes of existence? And I'm going to say this is a really insightful question for just someone who's a minion. I think this person needs to be promoted to a henchman, or maybe this is a hero in disguise trying to find out the evil overlord's plan.
Yeah, I think we just have to cut the chase here and shoot him, because clearly this person is operating far above their station and is obviously a threat. So I'm not answering this question. This person is a risk.
This is really too smart for them to be a minion.
I know a guy. He's right in the back room over here. Come on.
Yeah, so we're going to go talk to that minion. And in the meantime, come on over, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can come on over to lairofsecrets.com and subscribe to the RSS feed if you just want to hear this in audio. Lots of other places. We're in the alpha for Moonbeam. Pretty soon you'll see us live streaming it over there. So thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Welcome to Campaigns and Coffee. Grab your mug and let's dive into tales of adventure and the answers to your quirkiest of questions. Today, we're actually going to be talking about agency in the game for players, and how you as a GM or as a player could make the game more dynamic and not just follow that railroad.